Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I'm going to be joined in the next segment with Gerald Celente. And one of the things I want to talk to him about is, of course, economic trends. He covers trends in a wide variety of areas. Before I get to that, though, there's some breaking news that's up on Infowars.com from Jonathan Oosting. NRA celebrates new Michigan laws exempting gun records from public disclosure. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when you compare it to the other article that's another article up on Infowars.com from Mikhail Phelan, where the SWAT team in Massachusetts is refusing a Freedom of Information request from the ACLU saying, we're a private organization. We're not going to give you any statistics about what we do or how often we do it, and totally closing them off. And to which the ACLU said, well, if you are truly a private organization, then you're breaking the law. But contrast that to what was going on in Michigan. You had people in Michigan, this law in Michigan, as well as a response to what was going on in New York as well, where people were using Freedom of Information requests to get information about individual gun owners. That's not what FOIA was about. FOIA was there to give us transparency and insight into what our government is doing, not to let us spy on our neighbors. So they're celebrating the fact that they now have a new Michigan law that will protect gun records. These are private records. They should not be subject to FOIA requests. There's no reason for the public to have that information. If you look at that article, there's a great picture on there of a gun done by somebody named Travis Knight, my son. I think it's a great picture. Now, Gerald is going to be joining us in just a little bit, Gerald Celente. And, of course, yesterday we had some economic revision. You know, they love to revise these economic numbers as they go along. They give us one number, and then the next quarter they say, well, you know, it was actually worse than we thought, but now it's improving. Well, this was a major revision. An article that's up on Infowars.com says the U.S. economy has collapsed. This is a monstrous negative revision. We're not talking about a recession. We're talking about a collapse, and that's by Max Slavo. Now, other people have reported on this. We've got Market Watch saying the economy stumbles and a first quarter historic fall. They say the 2.9% drop in GDP is the biggest during economic expansion since World War II. That kind of puts it in perspective. We see another one here from Bloomberg. They say, well, it's the most in 5 years. You know, you can pick your points to try to make it read any way you want to. But then, of course, Obama wants it to look as though it's anybody's fault but his own. And this is an article from thefederalist.com. They say the economy tanked last quarter and it's everybody's fault but Obama. And they point out how the liberal organizations like Think Progress and, of course, Huffington Post will come in and say, hey, it was good that things didn't fall as much as we thought because, and one of the reasons is because healthcare spending is on the rise. That's a good thing. And as he points out in this article, he said, hey, I thought Obamacare was supposed to reduce our healthcare costs. Of course it wasn't. It was there to make profits for the insurance companies that wrote it. And then, of course, this tweet from Huffington Post, Obamacare just saved the economy from contraction. But then they find out that it's not 1% decline, but it's now a 3% decline. So now they've got to find a cause. Well, guess what? The cause was the weather. It was the winter, you know. It was a very cold winter. And, of course, MarketWatch.com picks up on that. They said the cold weather cost the U.S. economy about $15 billion, maybe. And they're a little bit skeptical because this is a yet another revision. And, of course, there are many other factors. But, of course, Obama jumps in with the weather, but he has a completely different take on it. Okay, he's going to save the economy and save us with global warming measures, okay? He says his initiatives are going to combat global warming and save consumers more than $60 billion in energy costs. This is the Washington Post's take on that. Well, of course, you're going to then pay twice that amount of money. If you really do save it on energy costs, you're going to pay twice that amount of money in carbon taxes to people who are private organizations. It's going to be a kind of indulgence that we will pay them for all the energy that we use. But, of course, the energy prices are not going to go down because they're shutting down power plants everywhere. But you've got the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times pushing that narrative. Stay with us. Joining us this segment is Gerald Celente, famous trends forecaster, publisher of the TrendsJournal. Before I go to Gerald, I want to tell you that we've got some specials of the Alex Jones Show. That's what supports the operation at InfoWarsLife.com. We have Survival Shield X2 and Fluoride Shield, 2 bottles of our best formulas for 30% off. in our Super Detox special for a very limited time while supplies last, or you can get the fluoride out with our Fluoride Shield formula by itself for 25% off at InfoWarsLife.com. And we also, at InfoWarsStore.com, we have a special offer for the ProPure water filters. If you get a ProPure G 2.0 big system, you get a free wire stand, as well as use the promo code WATER to save 10% off of your water filter. So check those out. It helps your health, it helps your family, and it helps to support our operation. Now, joining us, as I just said, is Gerald Celente. His website is TrendsResearch.com. His journal, TrendsJournal, is put out on a quarterly basis. I've got a copy right here on my desk. It's a nice publication. I want to talk to him about a variety of things. I want to talk about economics and his forecast on that, but Gerald is all about the big picture. And in the big picture, of course, war is looming heavy, because that's a major factor that is driving the people who are making the decisions, who are pushing us into war, and he has a lot to say about that. But Gerald, welcome. I wanted to first, before we get into the articles that you've got here, you got one article, Washington is driving the world to the final war. I want to get your comments on that and have you flesh that out for the audience. But before we get to that, I wanted to get your take on this major revision in the economy yesterday from a GDP decline of 1% to all of a sudden tripling it to 3%. And one of the publications point out that's the largest decline during expansion since World War II.
Yeah, it's also the greatest revision that's ever been done since 1976.
Yeah.
And so, you know, by the way, the winter up here in the East was terrible. It was one of the worst I ever remember in my life. So there's no question that it hit the markets. Mm-hmm. However, the story's bigger than that, because you keep looking at the numbers. So let's say we even cut it off, you know, we cut it in half. It was still down by, let's say, 1.5%. Now, this is after dumping trillions and trillions and countless trillions into the economy to prop it up. It's not working. There's other numbers that came out today that verify it. And here are some of them. You start looking at consumer spending. Well, it was down. They expected it to increase. It didn't. Now you're also hearing from one of the Fed presidents saying that interest rates may go up as early as the first quarter of 2015. This, David, has been an interest rate recovery, period, paragraph. Not only here, what do they have over there in the European Union? Negative interest rates. You can't make this stuff up. Really? I mean, yeah. If somebody, I'm going up with negative interest, what are you, out of your mind? The only people this is enriching, and the only reason the equity markets are at where they are is because of interest rates so cheap and all the cheap money. So let's do the numbers. You're looking at merger and acquisition for the first 2 quarters of this year that are almost at the height of just before the crash in 2007. We're looking at $10 billion a day worth of merger and acquisition activity. Now, this is at a time when you're looking again at those numbers that you were talking about. There's no GDP growth. It's negative growth. So what do we have? It's screwing the little people. Because when I was a young man, they used to have this quaint little thing. They were called savings accounts. So people worked hard, put money away, and the money that they put away was way above the inflation rate.
All right.
Now you have your money in the bank. This is what you get back, you know. You get nothing back. So it's hurting everybody across the board. It's setting up a crisis for retirements, and it's also pumping up the housing markets and the equity markets. Again, you look at the numbers. They're all down. Spending is down. Housing isn't that strong, even though we have all this cheap money in there, because first-time home buyers, which usually account for over 40% of home sales, that's now down to around 25%, because young people get lousy jobs. Oh, and by the way, it's going to get worse because of all the consolidation. So you don't have a housing. It's the housing market recovery is minimal when you put it into the grander context. And again, comparing what housing sales are now compared to what they were back, when the bubble was being inflated. You also, by the way, you have the housing bubble in China has deflated. The only people that don't know it are the people that don't watch it or that believe the guys that get paid a lot of money to go on CNBC and Bloomberg and report the big lies. Because I can tell you firsthand, and it was a trend, one of the top trends we had in the Trends Journal for 2014, Chinatown boom, they're flooding the area. Mm-hmm. They're buying up properties that they don't even know what they're going to do with. I know this firsthand. And I'm talking about companies coming out of Hong Kong with assets in real estate that are in the 20, 30, and $40 billion range because they're not buying up in the cities anymore because the prices are too high, so they're going out into the outskirts because the bubble has hit already in China. We're going up for a crash that's far worse than the panic of 08. Everything is in place. You look again, as you well reported with these phony numbers that came out, and again, this is coming out from the government, so you know they're even underestimating it. Matter of fact, there's an article today by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. I think it was on your site, having some of the facts there about how the Clinton administration put in these phony numbers, so we're not really looking at the right inflation rate. Mm-hmm. So when you add all this together, the GDP numbers are much worse than what they're putting out.
Well, as you pointed out, we don't have these things called savings accounts anymore because they really don't want Americans to own anything. They want an elite few to own everything, whether it's our cars, our transportation, our homes, our real estate. And as you point out, there's been a panic from the Chinese trying to move their fiat currency into some real hard assets, but that's coming to an end now, isn't it?
Yes, but they're buying up in the States. Mm-hmm. Because they have to put their money someplace, and you have the bubble over there. And again, all things are connected.
That's right.
Because when all else fails, they take you to war.
Yes, and that's the key thing.
Very interesting today.
That's what I want to talk to you about in the long segment. But of course, there's also the economic. One of these articles that we've got up today about the economy on Infowars.com is from Max Slavo, and he's quoting from some economists who said that the inventory drawdowns took down 1.7% from GDP number because companies don't build inventories if they don't have anybody to buy it. And people aren't buying it because they're losing their jobs because they're too expensive, especially at the low end because of healthcare mandates. But it's going to get much worse, Gerald, isn't it? Because we're going to see a lot of people losing their jobs to automation. I was talking about the transportation industry, how they're looking at 3 to 5 years out having self-driving cars. Well, there go the taxi drivers, there go the UPS drivers, there go the long-term truck drivers. They're going to be replaced by metal cans. It's not the Mexicans, it's the metal cans, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and it's even worse than that. There goes your life, too. I mean, really, they can't fix it. You can't get the ignition switch right.
Exactly.
Really, nothing.
Exactly.
How many tens of thousands of millions and millions of automobiles are they recalling? Oh yeah, now we're going to have a perfect one that could drive itself. You know who the cars have been designed by? Geeks and video game freaks. That's all they are.
But what's going to happen, Gerald, is when these things fail, it's going to be quietly ignored by the media. And then, of course, the corporations will pay massive amounts to the families in order to cover up the fact that their car drove them into a wall or drove them off of a bridge or whatever the mode of failure. I mean, we've seen that with the rapid acceleration of cars from multiple automobile manufacturers. That's pretty much been kept quiet. Not a lot has been said about that. And we know that as they take over, there's going to be failures because, of course, these cars and these computer programs, these map apps, they're all being done by humans. So you're not going to eliminate human error. or you're just going to transfer it to another place.
Exactly. Look, again, the ignition problem. Look how they covered it up with General Motors, the company that we bailed out.
Yeah.
Again, merger of state and corporate powers, fascism. Look at, they can't get the airbag problem fixed. And they're going to have a self-driving car. I mean, a lot of people with a real bad attitude, and this whole Silicon Valley. Silicon, man, the con is perfect. That's all it is. It's one big con. Hey, look how smart smartphones have made everybody. You know, this is another lie, a big technological boost for the people that are making the dough, and all it's going to do is to make a bad situation much worse. Again, look at the recall numbers.
That's right. We're going to come back right after the break. I want to talk to you briefly about this book and possible film in the spirit of Zizi in the short segment. In the long segment, I want you to tell us about where you see the final war going and where it's coming from. We've just been talking about his economic forecasts. In this short segment, Gerald, I want to talk to you about this book and film that you've got, What Zizi Gave Honey Boy. I just saw Jersey Boys over the weekend with my wife, and I thought it was interesting in the story where at one point Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons realized that one of the group members has essentially sold the group out to the mob, that they're massively in debt to the mob. I thought that's kind of an analogy for America, isn't it? But I'd like to hear your take, because your take is, as you subtitle it here, a true story about love, wisdom, and the soul of America. I'd like to see that film.
Well, here's the book. And of everything I've ever written, David, and I've written a lot of stuff over the last, 35 years, this is my favorite. And Zizi, Zia is the, in Italian, that's aunt. And Zizi is your auntie.
Oh, okay.
And she was my aunt. And I used to visit her all the time. I was going through a divorce. Her husband just died. And we used to play Scrabble all the time. And one day, she used to cook for me like all Italian women do. She could hardly walk. I'm coming back from the city, and the sink is filled up with pots and pans. She used to not only cook for me when I was there, but enough for me to take home for a week. And I start washing the dishes. She says, sit down. She says, you're my guest. I said, I'm cleaning the dishes, and she said to me, you know, Gerald, I listened to the news all day yesterday. What a bunch of begins with an S. They must think we're all morons. I stopped what I was doing and I wrote those words down. In 3 months, I wrote this book. And I used to call her every time I wrote a couple of pages. And it was what this country used to be. How her and her husband, they had a butcher's shop in the Bronx. And how they were able to buy a lovely home in the nice section of Yonkers. How the family used to be there, how there was, when this was truly the land of opportunity. And she used to tell me, my grandfather, may his soul rest in peace, she said, you know, your grandfather, when he came from Italy, he was so proud to be an American. He was the first person online on the voting booth. This is on the east side of New York, the Upper East Side. And she said, now, you know, they call me up and they say, Mrs. Villani, the Democratic Party, she's a Democrat, can we pick you up to go vote? She said, you know what you could do? You could pick me up to go shopping. I can't get out. So I wouldn't vote for any of you crooks.
Yeah.
And we started going back and forth about what life used to be in America and what it's become. The criminal operations, the immorality, that they could even have a thing where they could justify killing suspected terrorists with drones, where they could take us to war for lies, outright lies, and then put up that little guy with a bad attitude, the vice president of the United States, Cheney, and keep spewing out his lies. And there's no dignity anymore. There's no respect. There's lack of courage. So this book is about when it used to be and how to get it back. And this is an independent film. People are just doing this that read the book. So anybody that wants to help this film, by the way, Doris Roberts, the woman who played Everybody Loves Raymond, she's going to be playing Zizi. And she's the perfect person for it.
That's great.
The website is ziziandhoneyboy.com. and it's an independent film, and they're shooting it now. Doris Roberts has signed up. So anybody that wants to help bring Zizi back to life, and boy, do we need her now.
That's great. You know, Gerald, yeah, as I've told you in the past, my wife is part Italian and from New York. And so I know a lot of people that came over as immigrants. They came over because they loved America. And in many cases, unlike people, like first time I met my wife, she said, you know, what nationality are you? And I said, I'm an American. And she said, yeah, funny. No, where are your people from? It's like, well, America. I mean, they've been here for hundreds of years. So I don't have any recollection of that. But, you know, in many cases of people who came over and realized what they were leaving, saw what tyranny was about, whether they were in East Germany or some other place, and they realized the control that government had over their lives. When they tasted freedom, they appreciated it and they loved it more in America than they did elsewhere. But I'm very concerned about the demographic surge that we see with illegal aliens just opening up the border and collapsing them and bringing them in at such young ages and in such numbers that it's not a melting pot anymore.
No, it's not. The whole country's been destroyed by the Bloods and the Crips.
And I was just given this article from Kit Daniels, just went up on the Infowars.com website. TSA to raise groping fees that are being charged to passengers. That's right, they're going to raise fees. And of course, these are going to be fees that are hidden in your airline ticket prices. The new fees are going to be $5.60 for a non-stop flight and an extra $5.60 for each leg of the trip. This kind of reminds me of that movie Brazil that Terry Gilliam did, kind of a Monty Python take on 1984, where they've got the wrong guy, but they come in with a SWAT team raid. They break into his apartment. They put the black bag over his head, and then while he's tied up and while they let one hand loose while he's in the bag, they have him sign a sheet of paper agreeing to pay for his interrogation. You know, that's what this has come to. It's not a joke anymore. It's you look at. You look at Brazil, and instead of laughing at it, you're saying, yeah, that's happening now. You know, that was something that's decades old, but now we see that happening. And before I get back to Gerald, I just want to tell you that we just finally got back in stock a limited supply of Infowars Lung Cleanse. That's not going to last long, so you can go to InfowarsLife.com, get that while supplies last. Of course, that's something to help you. It's an herbal lung cleanse, the most powerful on the market, to help support your respiratory system, to help you deal with the toxic air and the environmental issues that you get from breathing our toxic environment. That's available now for a limited time, finally back in stock. So, Gerald, what do you think about the TSA charging us, adding these hidden fees to our airline tickets?
Before I get into that, I was mentioning about the Bloods and the Crips. Mm-hmm. They're the Democrats and the Republicans. They're murderers and they're thieves. You know, when I get emotional, I was talking about the Zizi, what this country used to be like and what it's turned into. I mean, I've been around. I know what it was. And it breaks my heart. And so when I say the Bloods and the Crips, I'm not saying that sarcastically. Look what they've done to Iraq. Mm-hmm. Look what they've done to Afghanistan. Look at the murder on their blood on their hands. Look how they steal our money. You're talking about the TSA now. Oh, yeah, that's going to stop it. Oh, yeah. Hey, David, how about these millions of people that are coming over the border?
Not concerned about them.
Dress up like Al-Qaeda or Al-Nusra. I mean, if anybody wants to come in, hey, you know, get online, man. It's a long line. They keep flowing over. Who they BSing with this crap that by listening to us, by feeling us up, by stealing our money, and by sending our people to go kill other people, that they're protecting us, and the imbeciles believe this garbage?
And this
I can't stop kids from coming over the border.
Well, it's the same agency. It's the same agency that is groping people at the airports and now adding fees to our tickets that has essentially opened our borders to literal gangs that are coming across with part of this drug war. That more people are dying in Mexico than have died in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and that's the drug war that our government is supplying, as well as saying that they're fighting it at the same time, and now they're bringing that violence into our country, opening the borders while they increase the harassment of people who come in via airplanes, who come in legally.
And again, it's not only here. Just what the Nobel Peace Prize winner did when he and Samantha Powers and Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton did with the destabilizing Libya, overthrowing a sovereign government and destabilizing the entire region with the covert war in Syria, with the destabilization, with the Iraq war, Afghan war. They're flooding into Europe. They can't stop them. 2 weeks ago, it was like 8,000 people just coming into Italy.
That's right.
So it's a destabilization worldwide being caused by people who are mentally ill. Does anybody have to see a sicker SOB than Cheney or Kerry? That guy's always shooting his mouth off, man. One loser after another, one vicious war, and people are wondering why it's not working. So when I say Bloods and Crips, I mean it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm looking at the spring edition of TrendsJournal. People can get that at TrendsJournal.com. The cover says, "War or Peace? We, the people, should decide." You have a lot to say about the Iraq War, how we got into that 11 years on, and look at what's happening now. We see this all folding up, don't we?
David, a trend alert. February 18th, 2003. Weeks before the war, Gannett News had asked me to do a op-ed piece, and then we expanded it for the subscribers to the Trends Journal. Here's what we said. While the victory on the battlefield may be swift considering the massive military power of the United States, the war against Iraq will be eventually lost. And we said it would evolve into a civil war, unrelenting suicide attacks against coalition forces, and people vowing to fight down to the last man to repel invaders. It keeps going on. Trend alert, March 28th, 2005, Iraq. Trend update, real war, fake democracy, what's next? Top trends 2005. Doing the Iraq drag. Washington's promise and the Pentagon's prophecy that this year's elections will establish democracy and facilitate U.S. troop reductions are as inaccurate as claims made last year by Vice President Dick Cheney that the Iraq war is behind us, and Major General Raymond Odierno's predictions that, quote, we have 6 to 12 months left of this insurgency.
Yeah.
On and on and on. We've been documenting it from before the war happened, saying exactly what would happen. And what does the prostitute media do? They keep bringing back all of the losers as this thing is going down the toilet to ask them what they should do next and what they see ahead.
Well, you know, I think the public looks at this and says, look at this. It was a failed invasion. It was a failed counterinsurgency. The whole point is to keep war continually going, isn't it? They knew they weren't going to win this counterinsurgency.
Again, yes, and it goes back to 9/11.
Yes.
You know, the new Trends Journal's coming out in a couple of weeks, and we really broke this down. And go back just a few weeks before the 9/11, Bush's popularity in the polls was down to 51%. This is a newly elected president. He's only in office several months. They were slashing the defense budget. Then you go listen to his speech to the nation at the House of Representatives. and how everyone stood up and applauded when they announced they were going to increase the military budget by $40 billion overnight. And this, by the way, is on the heels of the dot-com crash that happened in March of 2000. And the United States is going into the toilet in a recession. So when you start putting the pieces together, it all goes back to Eisenhower. Yeah. That's right, the military-industrial complex taking over the nation. And now, very interesting, today's papers, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, big articles. You know who they're buying? Brought to you by the National Association of Manufacturers and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. America's interests are at stake in Russia and Ukraine.
There we go. We've got to have a war.
For? No. Yeah. They're calling for peace. They're calling for prosperity. They're calling for no sanctions. They can see the handwriting on the wall.
Oh, really?
They know that the United States is in no position for more war. And that's what we're writing about. This is, again, the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Association of Manufacturers.
That is news. That's like a complete 180 to turn around because, you know, we look at, as you pointed out, 9/11, defense budget is going down. They say we don't have anybody to fight, so they've got to create a new enemy, and they create a new bureaucracy, Homeland Security, where they expand the military-industrial complex, not just to fight wars abroad, but to bring it home and to create a police state industrial complex. You know, it was Madison who said that if tyranny ever comes to these lands, it'll be in the name of fighting a foreign enemy. Well, we've got that now. That same organization, Homeland Security, we're just talking about collapsing the borders and then harassing people and charging them as to grope them, to take away their freedom and their dignity at the airport. So I'm really surprised to see the Chamber of Commerce and Manufacturers saying we don't want to have a nuclear war. I thought these guys would be all for it. That's good news.
Again, they know numbers, and the numbers are that the economy. Again, you look at the markets as we're talking. You know, they're down. Why? Oh, the other thing, the first quarter was terrible. Now they're downgrading the second quarter. Everybody that's real knows what's going on here. We're wasting over $1 trillion in total expenses on the so-called military, industrial, and cyber complex. And then you're looking again back at the real numbers here. The economy is going down. The people in the know that we cannot afford more war. And that's what this TrendsJournal is. Again, bring on peace, bring on prosperity. And what I'm launching, and we're going to be doing it in the following months, is an Occupy Peace movement. And anybody that wants to sign up, they could go to occupypeace.us. This is only for America. You want to do it in your country, you do it. And I'm up here in Colonial Kingston, New York. The 1777 Senate building, the oldest public building in the United States, is literally a stone's throw away from me. Every one of the founding fathers, no foreign entanglements. And that's what Occupy Peace is based on. No foreign entanglements. I see these guys on television, Cheney and Graham and this one and that one. What we have to do here, what we have to do there. You want to go in a foreign country? Send yourself, send your wife, send your kids. Keep me out of your psycho trip. All you do is create one disaster after another. So occupypeace.us is no foreign entanglements. Bring home all the troops, all the money, and rebuild America. Seal the borders tight. Bring home no more coming over. We can't take care of our own. After the Great Depression, when it hit, immigration, no immigration, until we can rebuild the country and help feed our own people and put them back to work. When we do that, I'm all in favor of opening the borders. Now, seal them tight. And by the way, I've been writing about this. Go back to Trend Tracking 1989. Go back to Trends 2000, Warner Books 1997. What a big shant was with the H-1B visas, with the immigration policy. They're destroying the nation. They're bringing in cheap labor, undercut our labor, and, oh, we don't have any smart people in this country. We got to bring them from India and China. We're just a bunch of imbeciles.
Yeah, that's right.
Even the imbeciles, you can't get a lousy job. You're talking about automation of automobiles. Drive them on their own. You don't need a driver. Check this out. The news thing is, when you go order some crappy corporate food, all you have to do, you don't need a waiter or a waitress. All you need to do is just put it into your smartphone and it'll get delivered to you. So all those lousy jobs, when you look at the job numbers in, quote, the hospitality sector, they're even going to do away with them.
Oh, yeah. It's not just manufacturing. It's going to be service. It's going to be transportation. It's going to be automation everywhere. And that's going to accelerate the concentration of wealth into the hands of the few. It's going to increase the unemployment. And yet we're told by, again, it's U.S. Chamber of Commerce and others are pushing for this uncontrolled immigration because they're telling us that we need a workforce. It was just last week that I've been talking about this last couple of days. David Petraeus was at the Thatcher Conference on Liberty, and he answered the question, after America, what's next? And he said, that's easy. North America. He starts talking about NAFTA. He talks about how right now we're going to go from a situation where we got 100 people on a assembly line down to where we've got 100 robots and 2 people looking at them. So how do we deal with that? But he's excited about this demographic surge. So you know that it's something.
Why would anybody listen to this stuff? Why would anybody listen to him?
Yeah.
Read his words. We have him in the TrendsJournal. Everything that he ever said came to nothing. You remember the troop surge in Afghanistan?
Right.
Oh, brilliant, man. Oh, yeah, great job in Mosul. Hey, how about Fallujah? Yeah, I'll Fallujah you. They're all losers, and all they do, the prostitute media, they keep recycling the same guys and women over and over again that have done nothing to destroy this country. Oh, and then you look at little David. David married the girl whose father was running West Point. That's right. Another guy that got his ticket punched. Punching his way up and brown-nosing his way up the line. That's how these guys get there. I began my career, I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate at 23. The worst job I ever had. Well, I'd be talking to my buddy, he'd leave me to follow the senator, pull his chair, and help him sit down. He'd come back, I'd say, hey, man, what's the matter? Cat can't sit down by himself? Needs some help? All they are suck-ups. They're brown-nosers. They don't have any courage. They don't have any dignity. You know what they have? They have a bad attitude and a lot of arrogance to tell us how we should live our lives. How could anybody allow what's going on in this country to keep going on? That's why I become emotional when I talk about what this nation used to be and how a bunch of little boys and girls have destroyed it, and there's no courage out there among the people to say, I had enough. And that's why we're launching Occupy Peace. You want to go to war? You're a traitor against Washington. You're a traitor against the Founding Fathers, and I don't need some guy from Harvard, Princeton, or Yale to tell me that Washington, a real man, that was a commander-in-chief, not these little boys that couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. Let them go to Washington. Let them go to Franklin and Adams and Madison and tell them they were all full of crap. No, you should go fight wars.
That's right, Gerald. And of course, he's working for KKR now. And he's been to Bilderberg the last couple of years. So now he's an investment banker, going from the military to the CIA to an investment banker. Now, Gerald, you were just holding up an ad from the paper showing that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other industry groups have taken out an ad calling for peace. We see that the Supreme Court yesterday is telling the police if they want to look at our phones, get a warrant. Now we've got a New York Court of Appeals striking down Bloomberg's soda ban. I mean, wake me up. Are things going our way or what? I mean, this is some good news. I never thought I would hear. I think I'm dreaming, or what's going on here?
Well, to some extent, And, you know, the soda ban thing, it is all this stupidity.
Yeah.
You know, no bullying zone. I love that one, too. Yeah, no, we're going to put, and a zero tolerance. It's the Nanny State.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, you know, we're coming out with the new TrendsJournal, and one of the stories is going to be, don't blame Obamacare. It goes back to with the soda ban. Blame I don't care.
Oh, that's good.
Look what the nation has become. And they try to, you know, we have an obesity problem. The numbers are much higher. There was a story out just yesterday about much worse than it is. The numbers are being reported. So we can't have all these drugs. They're trying to put soda bans, school things. We have a product that we believe can be FDA approved. It's called Tapazine. And it works like this. You cut off a piece of tape, and you put it in some milk. You can't get a spoon.
You can't get a spoon in there. You can't get a knife in there. You just duct tape solution. Well, that's right, you know, because duct tape for...
The side effects when you rip it off hurts a little bit. But what I'm trying to say is, how about self-responsibility?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How about enough of this crap for any jerk to tell us how we should live our lives?
That's right.
So, Tapazine, you know, said $29.95. You know, I mean, how can anybody make this crap up? Yeah. Do you see the drugs they're trying to push through? A new one is about to get approved. You take this thing, it's perfect. Your stomach swells up. So you can't, I'm not making it up. And so then you have the side effects. David, in this next TrendsJournal, we're showing how the greatest cost to the American public in healthcare is going to be having to do with food and diet, the poison foods that we're eating, and the enormous amounts that people are consuming. So when you go back to the story about the soda ban, you know, yeah, how about a mind ban, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's all about, and again, it's all tied again. When people start showing dignity, courage, and self-respect about themselves, they don't take baloney from a bunch of jerks that call themselves commanders-in-chief, secretaries of this or that, senator this or congressman that.
Well, and
so
of course the people who have woken up to the health effects, who do want to take control of their lives, what they do is they hide that information from them on the labels. They don't want people to know if they've got GMO products in there. They want to keep that information away from people, just like they don't want them to know what's in the vaccines or whatever. They don't want people to be informed. And yet at the same time, they say, well, you're doing things unhealthy because they've put a lot of unhealthy stuff like high fructose corn syrup into so many different things that we eat and a whole litany of things. And they say, well, you're not taking responsibility of your life, so we're going to create this, and this is an article on Bloomberg, hospitals will see donuts to cigarette charges for health. So they're going to start nanny stating everybody using the computer techno state. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gerald Celente. That's TrendsJournal.com. That's a great magazine. It comes out quarterly, right, Gerald? And you're about to have another issue.
The facts are in. The studies are legion. Sodium fluoride and other toxic members of the fluoride family are devastating the health and cognitive ability of the American people. So why are the social engineers adding it to the water? Simple. Dumb down the host population that the parasitic technocracy is feeding on. We may not have been able to get fluoride out of the water supply yet, but we can help to get it out of our bodies. I am extremely excited to announce the exclusive Infowars Life Fluoride Shield formulation, fusing 6 of the best documented ingredients from around the world to help the body remove not just toxic fluoride residues from the body, but a whole host of toxic substances. Let's take a stand against the globalist by blocking their poisons with Fluoride Shield. I use Fluoride Shield every day. Secure your Fluoride Shield and other pioneering formulations at InfoWarsLife.com today. Let's start cleansing our bodies now and support the InfoWar at the same time. That's InfoWarsLife.com.